Good morning, everyone. It feels weird to be on this side of the podium, although I'm reminded how old I am now, having graduated now 15 years ago, which is scary to me. As mentioned, I'm a 1998 graduate of the College of Law. What I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about my background, why I chose Syracuse, some of the benefits I think Syracuse has provided, can provide generally, but has provided to me specifically, and tell you a little bit sort of how my career path has gone. And if you guys want to jump in and ask questions as we go, I'm fine with that. And you can save questions to the end. It's up to you all. So Syracuse is, so let me just say at the beginning, I am about as local as you can get. I was actually born at Krause Irving Hospital, just down the road. I'm from Skaneateles, New York, which is about 25 minutes away from here. I went to high school about a mile and a half that way. But Syracuse is absolutely much broader than that. My best friends in the law school were from California, Canada, Michigan, Texas, and Colorado. So there's a really wide, diverse class of folks that come here, that come from all areas of the country and have had all different experiences. So, and I think that helps shape your experience in the law school. So I'm a partner at the Steptoe & Johnson law firm. So I'm based in Washington, D.C., but most of my work and my clients are in New York, so I split time with our office there. And I'll sort of, as we go through, I'll kind of walk you through how I got to do what I do now compared to what I did in law school, which is radically different from what I thought I was going to do when I was in law school. So, why did I choose Syracuse? Jim Boeheim? Just kidding. I do love Syracuse basketball, but my parents both were undergrads here. My dad is a graduate of the College of Law. So I sort of grew up with the orange mindset, if you will. But knowing, I always knew when I was in college that I wanted to go to law school. I took constitutional law classes in college. I went to Hamilton College, which is a small liberal arts school, about an hour from here. And I was really into philosophy and constitutional law and sort of thinking about legal issues. So I always knew that I enjoyed writing and I enjoyed arguing, although my various girlfriends through the years didn't like that part of it. But so I kind of knew I wanted to do the litigation side of law. And, having with my dad as a graduate, I got to meet a lot of judges and graduates from the law school during my, my high school years and college years. And what I was really drawn to is the fact that everyone that I had met that was a graduate really kind of took a very practical approach to solving problems. So, a lot of times, and I found this to be true as I got into larger law firms, when you have a lot of folks that, I don't want to put Harvard on in its own group here, but some of the folks that I had worked with that went to some of these larger Ivy League schools would always sort of just overanalyze things, and the folks and the focus here that I thought would be the focus, and actually was the focus, was practical solutions. You have a problem, your client has an issue, how do you deal with it? What's the most efficient and best way to get it resolved? And that's what I learned at Syracuse, and I think that is a critical component of what's allowed me to get to where I am today. In terms of selecting Syracuse, that had a lot to do with my reasoning. So in terms of what I did at Syracuse, and I think a lot of it has to do with your success at the College of Law, has to do a lot in terms of how much you put into it. So we hear about traditional students and folks that come straight through college. I came straight through college. There were a lot of folks that had taken a couple of years off. Some of my classmates had taken 15 or 20 years off. And I think the important thing to think about, and sort of through this I'll give you a couple little nuggets of advice, I guess. We lawyers always think we know what we're talking about, so take it all with a grain of salt. It may or may not be accurate. But in terms of succeeding at Syracuse, it's as much, you get as much out of it as you put into it. And so there were some colleagues, my focus was to treat it as a job. So I came in, and some folks handled it differently, but my goal was to come in around 8:30 in the morning, particularly your first year, to come in at 8:30 in the morning and stay till 6 or 7 o'clock at night, even if you only had one class. I wanted to be around the school, I wanted to be meeting people, I wanted to be talking to people, and obviously the library's right there in the first year, and throughout law school. You do a lot of reading, as you might expect. You learn how to read cases, you learn how to understand how judges think and reason and frame arguments and look at issues. That's something that you really have to nail down. And the professors I had, I had a torts professor my first year at the College of Law here that in my career was the greatest professor I ever had. The guy was incredibly funny. He was engaging. He really got people to think about the issues, and really made it very exciting, frankly. So I think that that's an important component, is to think about law school and to think about approaching your career, which is, this is really essentially the beginning of your career in many respects, as a job. And the folks that were sort of non-traditional in the sense that they'd taken a few years off or perhaps had another career before law school, they got that very early. Some of my classmates took a little bit longer to get it, but that's a critical component to success here, is to really think about and focus and engage. You get out of it as much as you put into it. So one thing is Alex Epsilante, who I think was the director of admissions when I'm here, but she's got a different role now, was really incredibly helpful and a very much of my first career mentor to me. And one of the things she would always tell me, and it's sort of ingrained in my head, is meet lots of people, talk to lots of people. Success in law is very much, your network. And I remember she always said, always have a copy of your resume in your bag. Now, us lawyers at firms anyway, we always have, we have all these fancy website bios, so you don't really need to have a paper resume anymore, so that may not apply to you necessarily. But the idea is to really focus on and have your information ready. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who your classmates are going to be. You may be sitting next to the future general counsel of General Electric right now in this room. Nobody knows. So meet everyone, talk to everyone, engage, establish relationships. And another thing that I tried to do is, and probably didn't succeed enough in law school, is take a lot of different classes. When I was in law school, we were sort of I guess I started, I'm definitely dating myself now, in 1995, when the real estate bubble was ballooning. And I had a lot of relatives in business that were making a lot of money and being very successful in the real estate market. So I took every real estate law class I could get my hands on here. I think they were all taught by Professor Christian Day. And I took econ law classes, and I was thinking, I'm going to be a real estate lawyer, and I'm going to really sort of take the bull by the horns on this when I get out. And guess what? I got out, and I never have had one real estate case. I've never had one real estate transaction. I've never done a single thing related to real estate. I'm an IP litigator. In fact, I represent fashion companies. You figure, how did I get from real estate law to representing Louis Vuitton before the International Trade Commission? Well, again, it sort of goes back to think about and try lots of different things, and be willing to take classes that you may never have had any interest in. Because a lot of your career, you're not going to really be able to control every aspect of it. You may get a first job that you thought you were going to do X, but they have a role for you to do Y. That's frankly what happened to me. and what happened to a lot of my colleagues from the College of Law. So I graduated in 1998, and just to go back, so in terms of seizing the day, in terms of law school, I mean, the school has great programs. I was a member of the Law Review. I was a member of the moot court team, and participated in national moot court competitions on the environmental trial team. And there are lots of different ways to engage. The trial law professors are really incredible. And if you want to do litigation, which is what I was focused on, there are tons of opportunities to really engage in that. The clinics are outstanding, and I would highly encourage the clinics, because one general criticism I have of first years coming out of law school is that, and this is everywhere, and this is just a problem with the fact that you really have to learn how to be a lawyer, but that's sort of learning how to understand the law, but then there's the business part of it. And the clinics help you address the business part of it. They get you thinking, okay, this is how I handle a client, and this is how I focus on an issue, and this is the way I efficiently deal with something and solve a problem. And so I would highly encourage folks to get involved in clinics, even if it's in areas that you have, you don't at this point seem to have an interest in, or maybe you don't think you have an interest in. You may start on it and think, well, this is the coolest thing in the world. I'm going to keep doing this. So after I got out of law school, I started at a firm here in Syracuse called Hancock and Estabrook, where I worked for about maybe a year and a half. And I got some really incredible experience. So for the first maybe 8 months of my career at Hancock, until another one of my College of Law classmates joined me, I was the only litigation associate in a 25-person litigation department. So you may not have an appreciation of how painful that is, but it is a little bit painful. But the pain is very rewarding, because I got a ton of really incredible experience that, if I hadn't had that, wouldn't have allowed me to get to where I am today. I mean, I took, as a first-year associate, maybe 15 or 20 depositions. And I was in the situation where, partners would come into my office at 7:30 in the morning, put a file on my desk that I'd never seen before, and say, go argue a motion at 9 o'clock. And it's that sort of ability to really, synthesize a case, figure out what the issues are, and go in and really present an argument to a judge in a very short period of time, which is something that we have to do as lawyers. And, I think the law school trained me for that. I think as a summer associate at the DA's office here in Syracuse, I was a summer associate at Hancock and Estabrook, and the combination of that work and the engaging aspect of the professors I had here really helped sort of frame and set me up to succeed in that environment. Just a quick story about when I was a summer associate at Hancock and Estabrook. So they gave me this sort of interior office, and I was compiling all this trash, this old cases I had read that I didn't need anymore, and I needed a trash can. So I called somebody and knocks on and then somebody comes to knock on the door. It's Donovan McNabb with a trash can for my office. And I was thinking to myself, something is completely wrong here. And it turns out he was a what we have in Syracuse are called runners, where they just run documents back and forth to other firms or other or the court. And so when Donovan was training for he was on the basketball team and the football team here, but during the summers he would stay here and train, and he worked at Hancock for 2 summers when I was there. So a sort of a funny aside from that story, when Donovan went to the Redskins, which was an abject disaster for him and for us, we had a small trademark case for the Redskins. And I was in a conference room with Dan Snyder, who's the owner of the Redskins, and Bruce Allen, who's the general manager, and I told them this story. And they both laughed hysterically for about 5 minutes, so thinking about where he was now, or at that point. So, but I digress significantly. So I think the key is, well, let me just tell you how I got to where I am now, which is very confusing and bizarre, considering I had no IP experience. I had no interest in IP in law school. I didn't even know what IP stood for. Well, I mean, I guess I did probably, but I didn't take any classes. So after I was working at Syracuse and at Hancock and Estabrook for about a year and a half, I had been very upstate New York for my whole life. I'd gone to Hamilton, I'd gone to College of Law, I was working at Hancock, and I really kind of wanted to branch out and take some of the experience that I had been developing, some of the good on-hand experience, and work on some bigger cases. So in college, I had interned for then Senator Moynihan from New York on the Hill and at the Senate Finance Committee. I really sort of loved Washington. And I applied to a number of different large firms in Washington to, basically start working on larger cases. So I joined a firm called Arnold and Porter, and was again, they liked my experience at a very early age out of, or graduation age rather, out of law school. And so I started working on a number of different cases, product liability cases, commercial litigation cases, you name it. And then I got staffed on a patent infringement case that was one of these big generic drug companies fighting a big branded drug company, and it was in Puerto Rico, which was really cool. So I signed on for that, and then that led to the case that kind of hooked me on intellectual property law, which is we represented Geico, the car insurance company, against Google and a company called Overture, which was the predecessor, or I guess they ran Yahoo's search engine setup, and this was back in 04, 05. And this was the first trademark keyword case to go to trial. And we were in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is one of the fastest district courts in the country. And it was super cutting edge. It was internet meets law. I mean, the internet was obviously fully developed, but the law takes a while to catch up to technology, and it still does. And so I got completely hooked on this concept of, how do we apply these old, well-established legal principles from cases that go back to the 1800s to what's happening in the technology realm today that's changing constantly. And that's IP. And there's patents, there's trademarks, there's copyrights, and so I really sort of dove headfirst into it. Again, having no experience with this in law school, or really up to that point, and really focused my entire career on that, and it sort of led to this very bizarre. If you really know me, I'm not a fashionite at all, but I represent a number of different fashion companies on the protection of their intellectual property. Louis Vuitton, I had a case last year for Burberry, where the company was sued by the Humphrey Bogart estate for a rights of publicity violation. We brought I've done a number of trademark counterfeiting and infringement cases for Kenneth Cole and a number of and LV and Burberry and Perry Ellis and Liz Claiborne, and it's really been very rewarding and exciting because these assets, the IP assets that these companies have, and frankly any technology company as well, are absolutely the most valuable assets that they have. If you go to HP or Apple or Microsoft, and you say, what's the most valuable thing they own, they're going to point to their patents and their trademarks and whatever copyrights they have. It far exceeds the cost of their plant, their equipment, personnel, anything. And it gets very exciting because the value of these items, of these assets, is really astronomical, and these companies do anything to protect it. So you get involved in these very exciting cases with really novel legal issues, and that's what I enjoy doing. But so to sort of stop the rambling about my career, I think the whole point of it is that you ought to really take a hard look at what the options are at the College of Law in terms of classes. There are a number of really interesting classes in a number of different areas. Take classes you never thought you'd be interested in, because who knows where your career is going to wind up, or whether or not you actually you may really love something and say, all right, this is what I want to focus on. And engage your professors. Everyone is very, very friendly here. Everyone wants to help you succeed. Alumni want to help you succeed. I take calls from students all the time. People that just want plain advice, people that want advice on IP, people that want advice on getting a job. And my sister-in-law is a graduate of the College of Law. I said my father is. I have a number of friends that engage in this way as well. I took advantage of the friendliness and the willingness of SU College of Law alums when I was coming up, and it's only natural, and I expect to be able to pay that back, and I think I share that view with all my other fellow alums. So, I think you have this huge alumni network. Syracuse is, obviously nationwide with international exposure, and that is something that you really, that is hugely beneficial and powerful when you're looking to, sort of launch a career. So I may be running past, I don't know where I am on timing, but if anybody has any questions, I can try to help answer them. Yes?
Sir, have you worked anymore with e-commerce or technology companies?
Yes, yeah. I do, we have a case for Kickstarter right now, which is a tech company, which you guys probably are familiar with. I didn't know about until they hired us. We're involved my firm is involved very heavily in they're called these smartphone wars. Basically, every phone company in the world is suing each other in one way, shape, or form. And so we represent Samsung and LG and this Chinese company called Huawei. And Apple we're sort of, I'm a huge, I'll never admit this, although I guess I am in films. I'm a huge Apple fan, but they're adverse to us on basically everything. So yeah, we're heavily involved in that space. Hi, Dean.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Several things you said, I just thought I could connect in a way to some other things. Number one, Arnold & Porter, where you started in DC. The global managing partner of Arnold & Porter.
That's right.
Graduate of our law school.
That's right.
You mentioned Samsung and LG. Been spending some time in Korea because we have 110 of our alums of our law school in Korea, and they are very highly placed in Samsung and LG. So when you're talking, everything you're talking about in terms of, where you start and where you can go is spelled out in so many, in so many lives.
That's right.
And so many careers that began here. And I just want to say, I don't often get an opportunity to hear the alumni who speak here on this, and I want to thank you for doing it. And
my pleasure.
I just loved hearing it, and I'm thrilled that you came back to talk to our potentially people in our potential mentoring class.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it and glad I was asked. So thank you.
So no other questions, and again, I would like to also thank Mr. Allen for doing